Coming up,
I always knew that I wanted to be someone that someone could look up to. I want to be the role model that I never had.
step into the inspiring life of Cordney McClain as he shares his love for family, poetry, and education. And
when my grandpa died, he said, always take care of it till you can no longer do it. And I still do it. This place does keep my family together.
Roberta Sapp shares the importance of family and how it guides her efforts to preserve her ancestral home. And
I think tribal nations have been advocating for living well with the environment in a way the rest of society can learn from.
Geneva Thompson explains how partnerships with tribal nations can help protect our planet for future generations. Plus,
a lot of historic events happen at the fort, around the fort, or because the fort was established there. It definitely holds its place in history for not only American history, but for Cherokee history.
gain insight into how Fort Gibson became forever entwined with the history of the Cherokee Nation.
The Cherokees,
a thriving American Indian tribe.
Our history.
Our culture.
Our people.
our future.
The principles of a historic nation.
Sewn into the fabric of a modern world.
Hundreds of thousands strong. Learning.
Growing.
Succeeding.
And stood fast.
In the past, we have persevered through struggle.
But the future is ours to write.
Osiyo.
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 These are the voices of the Cherokee people.
Osiyo, I'm Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. Welcome to Tahlequah, Oklahoma, capital city of the Cherokee Nation. For generations, the Cherokee story has been told by others. Today, through this groundbreaking series, we're taking ownership of our own story and telling it as beautifully and authentically as we can. I hope you enjoy these profiles of our people, our language, our history, and our culture. And please make plans to come visit us sometime. Wado.
Osiyo, it's how we say hello in Cherokee. I'm your host, Jennifer Lauren, at the Fort Gibson Historic Site in Fort Gibson, Oklahoma. Historically, as the Cherokee population grew here in Indian Territory, so did Fort Gibson's role in our history. We'll have more on that a little bit later in our Cherokee Almanac. Educator, actor, writer, and poet Cordney McClain is a true Renaissance man with a big heart. His art always leaves audiences wanting more, and through community outreach, he is always giving back.
My name is Mac Woods, and the Mac is for man articulating change. And this change creates a mantra in me. I really don't like the word humble too much. I go by eat, to exhort all tenacity to eat. Eat. Eat past when your belly is silence. Eat for the soul will ride. Eat, let loose the hate and hold fast to your dreams. My God, don't have mercy on my soul. As a spoken word performer, it's all about therapy. Therapy for me, therapy for others. My poetry is very heavily influenced by hip hop. All these different artists that were telling my story, in a sense. Very distinct stories that I saw growing up. It resonated. A lot of the stuff that I'm speaking in my poetry is either first person stuff, or it's things that I've seen, or telling the stories of people that don't want to speak up for themselves. It's all about self-love. My name is Cordney McClain. We're here at the University of Oklahoma within Price College of Business, and I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. All of my family is primarily from Muskogee, Oklahoma. My grandmother, she had 10 children, including my mom. It was just a lot of cousins and aunts and uncles coming through the house all the time in Muskogee. I grew up around a lot of men who sold drugs. I learned how to count money by counting drug money. Yeah, so I have 2 girls. I'm really big on being a girl's dad. I'm really big on making sure that they have all the confidence and understand their self-worth. I want my children to understand early they're beautiful. And I give them positive affirmations every single morning. And to the point they have them memorized at 5 and 4. And hopefully these things stick with them. That's one thing my grandmother taught me as well. She said, I'll give you lessons all day and you might act like you don't hear me. But once you walk away and you go into the world, if you can hear my voice when you're in the mix of making a bad decision, then I did my job. my godmother, Miss Mona Rogers, she was a ex-Black Panther. So she was really influential when it came to Black pride. Then my grandmother, she instilled more of the Cherokee side and just let me know different stories from her grandmother and her mother that was told to her. I didn't really understand that we were Cherokee freedmen until I became an adult. I kind of grew up always proud of being Cherokee. I would say the biggest impact on me, besides the matriarchs and the few male role models I had, was just seeing the violence, seeing people I grew up with either dead or in jail. Why did I make it out? Why did I do much better for myself? And my peer that was running right next to me just decided to just go directly into what we saw growing up. Well, if I don't have that mentor, well, then I'm gonna be that one day.
You are your product. Your reputation is your product. The reputation that you might have, the way you're branding yourself in your high school, affects all of your opportunities around you. It affects how your teachers look at you, how your counselors look at you, how your coaches look at you. That's your brand, that's your reputation.
Wanting to educate people kind of really started as an adult. So I had a long background working for a Tinker Federal Credit Union. I was a loan officer, I was a teller, then a mortgage expert and a credit expert. They started a financial literacy in the community program. We would go into community entities, we'd go into high schools, junior highs, and teach basic financial literacy. They were early on the curve when you talk about anything with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Start thinking about my mom working 2-3 jobs all my life. I wanted more, so I started thinking about, what do I love to do? What would I do for free? I love speaking to youth, I love mentorship, I love poetry, and I love teaching financial literacy. I would do all that for free anyway. I was already doing it for free. I want to be the role model that I never had. One thing I do here at the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office is I teach young professionals that usually are marginalized groups of students that you're going into corporate America, which is usually, looks very white and elitist. And they need to understand how to navigate those spaces. Understand all of these different dilemmas that will affect them being a successful professional. The world is not gonna water anything down. It's gonna be hard on our youth. So they need to be educated up front, educated financial literacy, educated about America's history, educated on self-love and self-improvement to make sure that my young ladies, my marginalized groups of students, they understand going into the real world that you may have been coddled a little bit here in college, but you need to prepare because the world is something different. I'm an author. I published this book late 2018. The very first poem talks about my frustrations or my insecurities as a dark-skinned Black boy, and then it evolves into me being a teenager, worrying about teenage stuff, sex, drugs, neighborhood violence, going into now me being a father and a husband. So leaving a legacy is huge for me, but leaving a legacy that they knew that the daddy was about something and that he tried to change the world a little bit before he left.
Thank God we don't look like what we've been through. We are all gorgeous, miraculous oceans with no sign ashore to contain us, so believe. And eat! Eat past when your belly is silent. Eat for the soul will ride. Eat, let loose the hate and hold fast to your dreams. My God, my God. Eat past any doubt, any naysayer. Believe in yourself. Mac.
Roberta Sapp is a forager for hickory nuts, sassafras, and knowledge. We discover how Roberta uses her skills in the kitchen and over the campfire to provide for 4 generations and how she is still passing on what her grandparents taught her.
I love my job. I really do. Where I work at Salina Food Distribution, we give out food, then take care of our elderlies, and I love my elderlies. When I'm at work, all the elders that speak Cherokee, they look for me because they know I can speak it. That's what they like, the elders. They like to talk Cherokee to you. Gayo Tawado, Kenwood Gan, Pinar Park Janosa, and Janelle. Johnny gay huge doggy ka, Sawagi, Husela, Talnoni goes doggy ka, Gashko, Juggilis, Sudalani gay huge Sawa Chuj, Nani, Ani Chuj, great grandsons, Ani gay huge, Jo Skunani, Nudla gay huge Agika Hes, Nudla Chuj Agika Hes. Say hi. He's like, what the heck? Say cheese. Grandpa always said, the water's medicine. Cleans your body. I've lived here all my life, born and raised here. Ran up and down this creek all my life. Lived with my grandparents. After I turned 8 years old, I was the oldest of 10 kids. I just remember them two on the porch all the time. That was their place to be, because all them people coming in and out, and it was always, hi, Grandma, hi, Grandpa. It didn't matter who it was. That's what they were called. It was special living with them.
Good job.
Skidda? Skidda? Educator, huh? Away on it, you got to know what. Chỉ stau đi hồi là lấy về nằm mày đi, on nóc đi hả? Cái nọ về hồ na, đồ oyster, sassafras. Cô hú cứ là lấy yêu để thiệt cái hè nọ hi chảo để con. Osiyo thấy yêu ní os, adis chige ha. Skole yêu western, sku os adis chige ha. I inherited an old basket that Grandpa and Grandma used to sift their kanuchi with. My grandma and my mom, my aunt used to come down over there where the water runs faster, and they used to clean chitlins with that basket. Growing up with my grandparents, I valued anything they told me. I love them to death, and hopefully my grandkids do. I hope they value everything that I've taught them, everything about this creek. And when my grandpa died, he said, always take care of it till you can no longer do it, and I still do it. And I do try to pass it down to my girls, and hopefully they'll keep going too. This place does keep my family together. We have a big family, cousins and everybody. We're pretty close-knit.
Usually when we have food, we have family around.
I love to cook, and every time we have a meal, I'm the one that makes the fried bread or the biscuits, and I learned that from Grandma.
My memories with my mom is this. Me and her, we cook all the time.
Anybody's welcome to eat at my place. That's how I was raised. Nobody goes hungry at Grandma's house, and that's how I feel. But I love to bake. I really do. Anytime anybody calls me for a pie, I'll make it. I've taught myself how to do this. I've been doing this for a long time. I'd say at least 30 years. And I do not measure nothing. I've made pies for so long, I can guess on how sweet I can make it. The pies and the cakes, I don't know. It just came to me. I guess I was just born to be a baker. Let's cut this pie. Crust looks good, if I say so myself. In at least I get do it again. And now I will touch aya. Skingo Atahistana Hinana. 86 you that here to get you Yahusha Hina, Hin 88 you that here to get you Yahusha Aljadi Daniel Johnny Nela. Uli Helista Danta Dis. Skiga Dinios the Waka Jolis na Yanedo Nole Jagido. The guardian your good dog Uli Helis careful.
Fort Gibson holds a unique place in Cherokee history. In this Cherokee Almanac, we find out how this historic settlement impacted the Cherokee Nation throughout the 19th century. In the 1820s, the federal government began forcibly removing some 60,000 indigenous peoples from their homelands in the southeastern United States, relocating them to lands west of the Mississippi River. For many Creek, Seminole, and Cherokee people, their forced removal to Indian Territory in what is now the state of Oklahoma ended up at Fort Gibson.
Fort Gibson is established in April of 1824 because of United States Indian policy. The soldiers have to establish a peace on a frontier in order to be able to further American Indian removal policy.
Located further west than any other existing U.S. post at the time, Fort Gibson was truly considered the American frontier. Its position at the convergence of the Arkansas, Verdigris, and Grand Rivers made it key to water navigation and protecting the new western border of the United States.
Soldiers from the 7th Infantry came here from Fort Smith, Arkansas, because of the difficulties of the immigrating Indians from the east.
In the early years of the fort's existence, much of the garrison's time was occupied monitoring tensions between the Osage and the Cherokee.
So in order to get other tribes that are back east to move west, the government has to stop this war that is going on between Cherokees who are moving into the area and Osages who are already living there.
In 1832, Fort Gibson became a disbandment depot for displaced peoples of the relocated tribes after the Trail of Tears. At these locations, tribal citizens received rations and supplies to start new lives in Indian Territory. Over time, the need for a military presence declined, and by the 1850s, Cherokees urged Congress to remove the stockade.
Once John Ross arrives in Indian Territory, he set about removing any federal garrison.
The military post is closed because there was not much need, and the Cherokee wanted their best boat landing in the territory for their own.
In 1857, the U.S. government deeded the property to the Cherokee Nation, who renamed it the town of Katua.
The government turns the buildings over to the Cherokee Nation. There are several mercantile stores in the area, and there's a boat landing. The location of it is very attractive.
The military buildings that were here were rented out by the nation and occupied most of the time by people of the Cherokee Nation.
The camp town rebounded, housing many pro-Union Cherokee and formerly enslaved people seeking protection.
The Federals moved in and refortified the old fort that was left by the Confederate Army.
The town of Katua was something that they could be proud of. They had substantial buildings here. They had some substantial people.
U.S. troops continued to occupy and improve the fort after the Civil War. New buildings were constructed and the military presence remained. In 1866, the Cherokee Nation reinstated the settlement's original name, Fort Gibson.
After the war is over with, the soldiers and the officers there are going to play a part in the Reconstruction in Indian Territory. Reconstruction happened in Indian Territory just as it did throughout southern states.
As Indian Territory prepared to become part of the new state of Oklahoma, Fort Gibson continued to have a front row seat for historic Cherokee events.
After 1890, as the Dawes Act and the Curtis Acts are passed, the soldiers return to Indian Territory with the Dawes Commission to protect records. and they used Fort Gibson as a base of operation. The old buildings left up on top of the garrison at the hill up there were used by the Dawes Commission to sign up the freedmen of the Cherokee Nation. It also served as a payment point for the sale of the Cherokee Outlet. A lot of historic events happen at the fort, around the fort, or because the fort was established there. It definitely holds its place in history for not only American history, but for Cherokee history.
Now considered the oldest permanent settlement in Oklahoma, Fort Gibson's history is forever intertwined with the history of the Cherokee Nation in Indian Territory.
Jalaki Ede Wanihi. Let's talk Cherokee.
Hi, Sinas. What are you doing?
Osiyo Uoria. Jalaki Ini Waniskesti.
Hawa.
Osta.
Sinas. Gadohadane.
Unak tosto tinga gotlanska. Ejul inoslana unak tosto ti.
Unak tosto ti inoslaska.
Osta. Osnindane.
Geneva Thompson is an attorney bridging the areas of environmental and tribal law. As a California state official, she is protecting valuable natural resources and ensuring access for tribal nations throughout the Golden State.
We're in a moment where innovation can thrive, and we can all come together and see how our laws, our policies, our regulations can be utilized in a way that will ensure the health and well-being of this planet. I think tribal nations are at the forefront of that. Osiyo, my name is Geneva Eb Thompson, and I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation and Assistant Secretary for Tribal Affairs for the California Natural Resources Agency. So I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. My folks were in the military, and so my dad was stationed out there and spent a lot of time in my childhood, either in Honolulu on Oahu or in Monterey, California. We did a lot of volunteer work around beach cleanup, either restoration or picking up garbage. Environmental responsibility was very important for both my parents. Something that my mother, who's a member of the Cherokee Nation as well, worked really hard to instill in all of our kids, that honor and respect of our Cherokee roots and that desire to continue learning and continue reconnecting with the Cherokee Nation. That has helped me as throughout my childhood, moving around everywhere, even though I wasn't in Tahlequah or in Oklahoma, I still had a connection to indigenous communities. After graduating from high school, I went to the University of Utah, where I studied history and political science. I decided to apply for law school, ended up at the University of California. I was particularly interested in UCLA's Critical Race Theories program and Public Interest Law program because those two programs really allowed me to study the intersection of federal Indian law and environmental law. And I knew from the very beginning that that's where I wanted to practice. I started my first year out of school was with a fellowship with OsiyoTV Foundation. And so OsiyoTV Foundation is a Native-led nonprofit that really focused on cultural resource and environmental protection and Chumash ancestral territories. So after my time at OsiyoTV, I worked for the Yurok tribe. I accepted a position as Associate General Counsel. I got to work on a lot of different cultural resource and environmental legal work on behalf of the tribal government, as I got to work with cultural practitioners, fishers, folks who rely on the salmon in the river. So the salmon are a very important species to the Yurok people. It's been told to me that The Yurok people and the salmon have a kind of a coexistence relationship where the salmon need the Yurok people and the Yurok people need the salmon. So we are on the shores of Hethclic-Raroy, which is translated to Klamath River. Early in the morning, you'll see a thick layer of fog coming off of the ocean, and it's just all cool and misty, and that beautiful fog kind of just roaming through the redwood trees. For the Yurok people, the river is significant and important for subsistence and commercial fishing, but it also is the lifeline of all Yurok lifeways. And so natural resources that the Yurok people rely on come from the river, or the river serves as the tribe's highway. And so you'll see a lot of folks who, they actually commute via boat up and down the river as like the most efficient way to get from one end of the reservation to the other. And it's been that way since time immemorial. Through a lot of different extensive research and working with other tribal nations, we ended up writing a tribal ordinance that codified the rights of Hethclic-Raroy. And so if somebody violated one of those rights of the river itself could be the plaintiff. It could represent itself in tribal court to ensure that its rights were being protected. And I think it's a cool way of like really flipping how to use a court system. Because the salmon are such an important species for the Yurok tribe, a lot of the work that I did when I was legal counsel for the tribe was really looking at the harms that the river and the salmon were facing and how to find solutions to those harms. The Klamath dams, there's toxic algae blooms that are on the river, there's drought with low water or warm water, and all of these kind of factors have varying impacts on the salmon. Traditional knowledge that tribes have is so integral and so important to how we look at the management of resources. So early in 2021, Governor Newsom appointed me as the Assistant Secretary for Tribal Affairs for the California Natural Resources Agency. What's really exciting about this position is the first time that the California Natural Resources Agency has ever had an Assistant Secretary for Tribal Affairs. The hope is that as the Tribal Affairs program grows, we also grow in our co-management agreements and increasing access for California Native American tribes to access state lands and to access the natural cultural resources that are so essential and important to tribes. Having a space where that knowledge, that expertise, that importance is really integrated throughout how we should live within the environment as good stewards, as good members of this planet. I think tribal nations are really the leader in understanding this and have been advocating for living well with the environment in a way the rest of society can learn from and hopefully model moving forward.
We hope you enjoyed our show, and remember you can always watch entire episodes and share your favorite stories online at OsiyoTV. There is no Cherokee word for goodbye because we know we'll see you again. We say, Donadago Ha'i. Wado.